And now, more Utalk. Now,
welcome to Utalk. I'm Steve Russo, and Larissa, Katie have the day off. One of my favorite people is going to be with us, and some of you that have followed Utalk know him very well, and I think he can bring some good advice to us in how to handle disappointment. That's what we want to talk about on the show today. Disappointment comes in many different forms, in many different shapes, lots of things. Some of us experience more disappointment in life than others. Some of you right now are saying, "Hey, Steve, I've had enough. I mean, it isn't working, man. I can't keep taking this all the time." So we want to talk about that, and that's where we're going to bring in I'm going to say a very special guest, but really he's part of us. He's our very own Dr. Josh Morgan, and I've asked him to join us in this conversation. Dr. Josh is the National Director of Behavioral Health and Whole Person Care for SAS Software. He is an amazingly gifted guy, great communicator. But you know what I like best about him? Besides being a really good friend, his heart for young adults. He just has a special place there, and he's worked with them, with young adults in a lot of different situations, and he has just jumped on. Dr. Josh, hello.
Hello there. Likewise, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to join us. You know, when I introduce you using that, it's like, wow. I know this guy. I'm going to be talking to him. I mean, this is impressive. No, seriously, you've got a lot of great creds, but you're a real person. You know, you talk a lot about the whole person, but you're a real person. And I can't think of anybody I'd rather have this conversation with on the show today than you. I mean, it's interesting. We both live in Southern California, not too far from each other, but I'm sure you've picked up on this. The election protection is happening. $4.5 million spent in the city of Beverly Hills to close down shops, close down the streets. Businesses have been boarded up across the country. I was in a sporting goods store in our area just 2 days ago, and I wandered upstairs, which is where they sell guns and ammunition and things like this, and camping gear. I mean, it's a very cool place. The section of the store where they typically sell ammunition, pistols, rifles, this kind of thing, looked like it had been decimated. I've never seen it like that before. I've never seen any sporting goods store like that before. I mean, because you got people who are interested in doing those kinds of things. They're hunters and they target shoot and things. I mean, the stuff was gone. And in order to be able to buy it, you had to get in a different line that was already closed and get a wristband. And you just got to wonder, there's going to be, I think when all of this settles with the election here in the U.S., there's going to be some disappointed people. There's going to be some angry people. There's going to be some hurt people. Obviously, we want to deal with that, but not just that kind of disappointment. I mean, I think that's at the forefront of all of our minds right now, especially those of us living in the States. But there's other disappointment in life. So let's start right there. Let's just start with the election. Where do we begin to handle this disappointment as individuals?
Yeah, well, I think even a first element of disappointment, especially around elections, but in many pieces of life, is the disappointment of not having clear answers even right now. I mean, that might even be making a lot of things worse right now. I would say for a lot of us, whether it's the candidate we want, the candidate we don't want, if you know what direction things are going, then I can choose what my response is for actions. Do I celebrate? Do I figure out, what things I need to advocate for next? When we're in this limbo phase, the ambiguity, the unknown, just adds to that even more.
I can see that. I can see that because you aren't there. There's no certainty. There's no of how you do respond. I mean, let's face it. Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose ultimately. And
That's right.
It's just interesting watching people. I went to a store earlier today that's, it's a nationwide chain, Costco. And I mean, water, toilet paper, paper towels were flying off the shelves. I mean, it was just, and limiting, and it was like this pandemania almost. Maybe that word is too strong, but
like how it was 6 months ago as we were all locking down, right?
Exactly.
And that's what happens when we have this ambiguity, this unknown. Fear creeps in even more. There is a lot of fear around this election on both sides.
Absolutely.
And it's not even fair to say both sides, because that kind of simplifies it into that there's only two sides, and there really isn't. But
no, there really is.
For sake of argument here,
keep it simple.
There is fear, and when there is unknown, I mean, even put ourselves 6 months ago when we were brand new into a kind of lockdowns and pandemic. Nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew what was going on. So what do? We stockpile. So similar things happening. When we don't know, fear creeps in. Disappointment, all of these things. Part of that is, disappointment in some cases may actually be an understatement to what is really going on. I mean, it can be even stronger forms of fear for many folks. On, again, both sides, there are various fears. How do we respond to fear?
Exactly.
How do we respond appropriately?
That's my next question is because fear is, I like the way you've brought that down to a point of that's at the core of this. Fear of what is my life going to be like if this candidate wins or this candidate wins. Again, keeping it a little bit more simple for the sake of our conversation. How different is my life going to be? Is this pandemic going to continue? Is it going to end?
Sure.
Fear is a very, very strong emotion, as you know much better than me, being a psychologist.
And most of us don't like fear, right? and we call it all sorts of other things. I'm nervous. I'm anxious.
Yes, there we go.
I have higher anxiety than many folks also. So I get it. We all avoid fear in many ways, but all of that is a form of fear. Fear is an information point. It lets us know there is a threat of some sort, or at least a perceived threat. I believe something is threatening. And it's not only just to me. You bring up an important point. How will my life be different? But there's also an important consideration of how are my loved ones' lives different? Maybe it isn't my life. What about my neighbors? What about,
my best friend,
as
whoever it is?
Absolutely. As we think about bigger community. And I think that to me, in this broader conversation, is a key point that I hope many of us take away from, is going back to this idea of not just thinking about ourselves, thinking about what about other people's needs.
Ooh, I like that. You used the word community, and that's missing in a huge way. It's interesting. We have interns here at Utalk, and they've been doing a great job. Just they're creating all kinds of cool things, new things. I've never met them face to face. Katie, Larissa, they've never met them face to face. They're working remotely. And I was talking to Ben, it's Ben and Kylie for this semester. And I said, I think we ought to have, we've mentioned having like a Google chat or Zoom call or something. Oh, Steve, that would be great. He said, just a cool sense of community. And I thought, wow, if this keeps up, we're going to continue to have interns, but I want to do it earlier in the process.
Sure.
To start, and then maybe doing it periodically to build that sense of community. It's sometimes I think I lose track of that because I'm running so fast, so many different directions, trying to accomplish as much as I can.
Absolutely.
But and I guess I'm sitting here thinking, can we not have community with somebody we disagree with? We should be able to, because I was thinking about that too. It is part of this learning how to agree to disagree.
Yeah. And there's a very wide range of things. And we are in a place in many areas where disagreement is not acceptable.
Oh.
That is a problem.
It's a huge problem.
The reality is there is nobody you're going to agree with 100% of the time.
No.
It's just not going to
Seriously?
happen. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
and there's a range, at the same time, so the fact of we can disagree on things, but we both believe that we have the same goals in mind. If having a commentary on kind of the partisan nature, I don't even want to use the word political because I think that that's a misused word.
Yeah.
Because politics
Overused.
is really, it's just about power. Everything's political. People say, "Oh, I'm not political." No, you're political. Everybody is political.
Everybody is.
There's a difference between political and partisan in my language, where it's, again, simplifying down to two parties, Republican, Democrat, when it's not that, but, where it has to be an us versus them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times in the past, we could all see we have the same goals in mind. We want to make a better society. We want to make better community. And we all have those goals in mind. We may not totally agree with how to get there, but we're all along on the journey together.
Together. We're on that same road together.
We're losing track, I think, of the end goal for the process in many cases.
Oh, absolutely. And what comes to mind too, and it's a whole nother discussion we'll have to have sometime, but the issue of tolerance has been blown completely out the window. And it's like I want you to tolerate me and what I believe and what my goals are and what my worldview is, but I don't have to do that for you. Well, then it's not tolerance. It's intolerance.
We're not really listening. I think that's a big theme on all of these parts is we do tend to default to what are my needs? What is my perspective? What is my fears? And that's legitimate, right? We have to pay attention to that.
You have to.
And what is the other person? Even just between you and me, Steve, what is Steve's desire? What is Steve's concerns? If we listen to each other, that can help us get to a place where we may not even be disagreeing as much as we think we're disagreeing.
Exactly, because we don't even know. And I think that can bring us to a point, too, of respect.
It is.
We don't respect each other, and I think in part because we don't respect ourselves.
I think that there can be a big part of that. Respect is another piece that I think often gets overused. When I, especially in working with a lot of families, I'd often have parents say, "I want my kid to respect me." And what they were really usually meaning was what I kind of deemed behavioral respect, in contrast to what I called attitudinal respect.
Okay, sure.
Yes, sir. Sure. Yes, ma'am. I can behave in terms of respect.
Right.
But is that really respect? Am I really respecting you as a person? And that is a part that I think we are losing in many cases, is we are not seeing the core values of a person and having those fundamental values.
Well, we've lost track. I think we've lost track of what it means to be human. And another word I see coming in here, possibly, is honoring.
Sure.
Instead of that overused word, honoring. Let's go back for a moment here, because this is such a. We've got several discussions going on here, which I love. But going back to the fear, can we unpack the fear issue quickly, I guess, or succinctly? Because I think at this moment in time, using the election, and then we'll jump off onto some other life disappointments, we're fearful of what we think is going to happen, but it hasn't even happened yet. So we're causing anxiety. I've got a relative who couldn't sleep all last night and very anxious, and what's going to happen? Eventually something will be resolved. But in the meantime, is it a false fear that we're dealing with? Is it an unreal fear? What are we dealing with?
It's often hard to know until something happens, right? Fear is a warning light saying, hey, something is a problem. We have to be cautious around any form of fear. Sometimes it's very, very legitimate, and it is a way to help prevent negative things from happening. Sometimes it's, I'm just going to be cautious and I will wait and I will watch.
Good.
Right?
Sure.
I think really the first step is being aware that fear is happening. You talked about anger. Oftentimes anger is actually fear masquerading as something else. Fear makes us feel very out of control, very vulnerable, almost by definition.
Yes. Yes.
Who wants to be in that kind of position? I mean, don't. and let's go to American culture. And we're two guys. Are guys supposed to be vulnerable and out of control? By
Absolutely
and large,
not.
In our culture,
we are men. We are supposed to be in control
and
unbeatable.
Anger, that's right. Anger can make us appear we're in control. Go back to this idea of power. I have power.
Okay.
Fear, I don't have power. I'm one where I disagree with some people where they say anger is always some other emotion. I think anger is sometimes legitimate anger about something wrong that happened, and it motivates us to make good changes. I mean, that's the whole basis behind, that's the whole basis behind a lot of our civil rights movements, right?
Yes.
There's legitimate anger. There are things that are wrong, and I am peeved about it.
Yeah, and I'm going to do something about it.
And it's going to turn into action. That's a good thing. Fear can be very powerful as well. If we can be aware of it. Do I recognize that I am fearful? One, just recognizing that I have fear.
Recognizing it, number one.
Two, what is it about? Because that then gets to your question, Steve, of, all right, now let's start evaluating. I know what I'm actually fearful of. I am fearful of, and we can go down a long list.
Sure.
Until I'm aware of my own fears, I'm never going to be able to communicate it to somebody else with whom I disagree. Now, the other thing that I think is really important to consider in this broader conversation about respect is, do we respect and honor each other's fears? And even if I may not believe your fear is legitimate, maybe it's that you're just anxious, it's never going to happen.
Sure.
Can we honor that fear? And is there a possibility that it is quite legitimate and may actually happen? Well, and is there a place where there's a disagreement? Are there times when it's actually okay to not agree to disagree? Go back to civil rights movements, right?
Sure.
Is it okay to say, slavery? We'll use an extreme example.
All right.
We're going to I'm going to disagree with you. I think slavery is just fine. I mean, in today's we're not going to say that.
No,
right?
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
I'm not going to respect that opinion.
No.
But I think it goes back to this core idea. To me, opinions and agreeing to disagree, does it fundamentally respect other people?
I was going to bring that up. I mean, we can disagree with a feeling you have, a fear you have, a position you have, and not respect that position, but we need to respect you as a person, as a human. And something that struck me with what you said a moment ago in listening. Listening has been an interesting theme for us for weeks, really, as we've had different guests come on, and frequently I'll ask the question, what would you encourage us to do to make a difference? And one of the first things that's been popping out is we need to listen more, but listening is not just with our ears, it's with our heart. Yes. And really listening quickly, because I want to move on to some other disappointments as we talk about this is rich. When the results of the election are known, what's the best thing all of us can do? Because somebody's going to be happy and somebody's going to be disappointed. Yeah. What's the best thing we can do as individuals when these results are known and we have friends, family, neighbors who don't agree with our position at that point in time, or maybe respond positively to our fears, possibly, of what the future. What is there something like a core thing? You're always so good at this with coming up with a core thing that we could.
Yeah, take a deep breath, take a pause. I think that's probably true for all of us, regardless. Be it a sigh of relief or a sigh of, okay, what's next? Pause.
Interesting.
Pay attention to what's going on. Again, it goes to the same. What's going on inside of me right now? What's going on inside of my body? What's going on inside of my mind?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? There is no reason that I can think of right now where there is not a good reason to pause and self-reflect and take care of ourselves first. Maybe it's get some sleep, eat some healthy food. You don't have to talk to anybody yet.
No, get some exercise.
It may be better.
Yeah,
exercise.
And maybe turn off social media. I'm to the point right now where, for the most part, in the next few days, and I'm a news junkie. I'm not gonna watch it. I'm not gonna look at some of my news feeds that I get. A bunch of them every day. It's just I like that. Just taking a pause, a deep breath.
And it's a reminder for myself too, right? I woke up many times in the night. I'm like, I'm going to see the phone. I want to look at the phone. I want to look. Nope, don't look at it. It's not going to change anything. There probably won't even be any new updates.
No, exactly.
Just don't. The next step, then, I would say is again core to everything we've been talking about: respecting others, feeling respected, listening, fear, anger. All of this comes back to take a breath, be self-aware. The next piece of it that I think is really a theme comes back to, and that I think is one of the best takeaways, is with what appears to be the highest level of voter turnout ever. And over the past years, we are having higher rates and recognizing the importance of civic engagement. We need to be involved.
Which is
with
huge.
A lot of us. That's right. A lot of us, have thrown up our arms in the past. It's a system. It doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count. Blah, 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 blah. It's annoying. Be it in protests, in making actions, in voting, in running for office, etc. Take that disappointment, that fear, that anger, and determine, what do I need to do next? Regardless of who is in the White House, be it your candidate or not.
Sure.
It comes down to the people, have to make those changes. So any of our reactions,
have to have that energy then. Because I hear that underlying, energize for change and be the change.
That's right.
No matter what's going on.
I personally believe that is one of the big takeaways out of all of this that I hope will energize our communities. Is regardless of the outcomes, especially of the presidential election in the United States, I hope there are more people who are willing and able to be engaged and advocate for their needs and other people's needs, and being aware of that more.
Yes.
That is a good outcome. And we can all do that. Ultimately.
Well said. Well said. And thank you for the reminder, because I think we've lost perspective. We had Trent England on with us. Trent is involved. He's a strategic initiatives planner. I'm not getting it right, for the Office of Public Affairs in Oklahoma. And that was the theme for him. Get perspective. Get perspective. In fact, he went so far, and I think you'd appreciate this. He said, when you're looking at the candidates, he said, if you can't find something you disagree with your candidate, or something, I don't want to use the word wrong, but let's just say disagree with, and you can't find something with the other candidate that you can agree with, then you best step back and get perspective.
And there's that theme of step back, take a breather.
Absolutely.
Be aware of our own reactions.
Sure.
And again, even with fears, strong disagreement, there are strong emotions. I believe all emotions are legitimate. They are there for a reason. They are informing us of something. And we have had some very important conversations in this country in the past 6 months.
We have.
These are things we need to address.
Certainly.
We cannot just dismiss the concerns and fears. And that's the nuance I really want to emphasize, especially for some folks listening, where it's, regardless of outcome, we need to pay attention to these concerns, these needs, these fears, these desires, these hopes, these dreams, and respect them. And go, how can we do this together?
Yes, absolutely. That's the whole thing I'm saying or thinking is leaving that door open. I know you and I have had conversations, personal conversations, and you've referred several times to building the bridge. Don't burn the bridge. So let's build bridges to one another. Let's listen. Let's take our energy, and instead of fighting and being angry and being destructive and even life-threatening, can't we put that energy to better use and work side by side? So now I know I see it a lot in your social media and, of course, in conversations, things you've written about whole person, taking care of that whole person. Now, Let's broaden this disappointment to things like, I know people listening have had disappointment with relationships.
Sure. Or
disappointment with they're not athletic enough at school and they didn't make the team.
Sure.
They lost a job. They didn't get the part for the spring drama production. You know, the list goes on and on and on. Finances, I don't have the car. You know, I'm disappointed in the car. I'm disappointed in myself for this. How do we handle disappointment in general and become healthier as a whole person?
Yeah, it's a
It's a
great
broad
perspective.
question. Yeah.
It is just a little dense there.
Sorry, well, you know, come on, you're Dr. Josh.
But I love that perspective again of the holistic view. One of the core values for me, and I was talking to a graduate student actually earlier today too. And, you know, my definition of whole person care fundamentally is about being strengths based. It doesn't mean that there aren't problems.
Okay.
But it's also focusing on the good things that are or may be going on. Again, I think a theme of that I'm wanting to share today too is to not dismiss the disappointment, not dismiss the honest emotions. Again, the fears, the anger, etc. That's step one, really, in handling any disappointment. At its core, disappointment is a loss. Go back to these other things. You know, maybe I didn't get into the school I wanted to get into.
Sure.
I, didn't graduate. I didn't get the grade. There's hopes. There's dreams around that. And I have lost that. Right. And maybe it's I've just lost a piece of it. Maybe it's a not now. Maybe it's a delay. That is still a loss. And we often think of losses really just more in terms of death, but there's losses all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have to grieve those things. So really being able to recognize, I was so excited. I mean, we've talked about, I've done theater. I've not gotten parts that I really, really wanted. And it was disappointing. And there's a variety of reasons. Can I be aware of why did I want that? And how else can I get those needs met, perhaps?
A learning experience then. It
could be a learning experience.
And there's that word keeps coming to me is perspective. Take a deep breath, stand back. Say, I've got this need, I've got this desire. How can I get those met?
And there is a fine line at times between, what's kind of that disappointment in contrast to a really significant loss. And it's really more of a continuum in some ways. Losing a job at, not to be dismissive, at 16 is going to feel very, very different than losing a job at 56.
Oh,
or 46.
Yes.
Or 26. There are so many other things.
Other factors.
Up in that. That's right. Presumably a 16-year-old's living at home. They don't have to pay rent, all those kinds of things. I'm paying a mortgage, student loans. I have 2 kids. I lose my job right now. My stress level is going to go through the roof. And what emotion's coming back to it? Fear, often. I'm afraid I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to be put into collections for student loans. I'm not going to be able to feed the kids.
Yes.
And I can spiral into that. With any form of disappointment, I didn't get the grade I wanted. I didn't get to go on the date. I didn't get the part in the play. I'm never going to be in another show again. That's fear, right? Maybe it's true.
Truly.
Maybe it's not true. And I think it is that theme of perspective. What am I afraid of? What is the reality of that? And how can I mediate that? Perhaps it is a lesson. Perhaps it's, I'm disappointed and it was not fair. And you know what? There's a lot of things that are not fair.
Life isn't fair.
Most of us have probably experienced that. And it was wrong. Some things are wrong, just flat out. And you know what? That can be a wonderful trigger for us to be able to go back to this theme of let's start advocating for that. How many people have had a loss in their lives? I mean, I think back in high school, I lived in an area where there were a lot of car accidents, very serious ones. I mean, one of the intersections I passed, I went back and forth to high school with. There were multiple accidents a week there, multiple fatalities every year. I mean, I lost friends in car accidents in high school. And so this idea of safe driving was very much on the forefront of my mind. And there's an organization called MADD, M-A-D-D, Mothers Against Driving Drunk, or Drunk Driving. I don't remember the order. And I, if I'm recalling correctly, founded by a mother who lost her daughter, I believe, in a drunk driving accident.
Yes.
Tragedy. Disappointment, to say the least.
Oh, huge.
Right? Yes. All of these hopes, these dreams, these, desires lost. and turn that around into something proactive to say, I'm not going to let this happen to other people. How many times have we heard that? People who get a health diagnosis, people who have been off in war, have had bad things happen. I mean, we go down the list, and there's opportunities to turn around. Maybe it's, I'm going to volunteer for something. There are powerful ways that loss, and that's, I think that's probably almost a better word than disappointment. It's more encompassing. And disappointment, loss. Sometimes we can, it's almost a euphemism at times. It's just a disappointment. It's okay. It's a loss.
It's a lot. It is.
Feel
no question.
Loss, right? And maybe it's silly. Well, you know what? It doesn't feel silly to me in the moment.
And there's that listening and the respect and the honoring, listening with the ears and the heart. If we're listening, if we're with a friend who's going through this, or we're trying to help somebody.
And therein is the key. And I think goes back to our overarching conversation, and is helpful for me too, even in this is, okay, I have my fears. What are your fears? Let me understand the people, the friends, the family where we may disagree, be it election, job choice, career direction,
relationship.
I mean, we can go down this list, right? Where we have disagreements. We, as a species, are defaulting to focus on ourselves. And as I said, take a deep breath, focus on yourself, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
There is that part. We have to recognize it. Don't dismiss your own reaction, but don't get 100% caught up in it. If we want to move forward and find unity and grow out of a loss, what is the other person's fears? What is the other person's concerns? So somebody else got the part in the show. What if they hadn't got it? What would their fears be? What are the consequences? All disappointments, right?
And you know, it's becoming almost, this is oversimplifying it, go-to people, where people know they can go to you with their fears. I had a 2.5-hour text conversation with somebody a couple days ago who was very upset. It was on Halloween, and it wasn't about Halloween. It was about somebody who they lost. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail. I don't think it's important, but I thought, I've become a go-to person for him. He feels comfortable. And I was trying through the text encourage, and I was trying, it sounds strange, but listen to what he's saying, not analyze, just listen, acknowledge, just acknowledge what he was saying. And I mean, it was funny because he said goodnight to me probably 10 times. I think the last text I got from him was at 12:30 a.m., you know.
Wow.
But it was very encouraging to me because I thought, I want to be this kind of person more.
Yes.
Not necessarily to more people, because I don't know that emotionally I could handle everybody, you know, it was a very humbling thing that this individual would feel that comfortable and vulnerable. So I guess that's it, as we're going to have to bring our conversation to a close, unfortunately. But what's that, if you can give us like a synopsis of helping a friend, a family member with loss, we're going to use that word instead of disappointment, whatever that loss is going to be in the next few days, the next few weeks, whatever, what can we do to be those kinds of people?
Yeah. You know, the word that's coming to my mind is actually triggered from what you said, humility.
Oh.
It means, in my mind, especially in this context, I don't know it all. I definitely don't know it all about you. And let me be curious. That's the thing I guess I would pair with it, is true humility. And I think that you do demonstrate that, Steve, having had many, many conversations with you.
Thank you.
It doesn't mean that we don't have strong convictions at all. Being able to be humble also admits that maybe I'm wrong, but that means I'm going to listen. I'm going to be curious about what is going on, and that is foundational to respect. As you had said before, if we can keep probably those two, for me at least, those two words in mind, humility and curiosity,
Oh,
that will probably drive a whole lot of different types of behavior. And I'm probably going to have to be self-aware the whole time because there are certain people in the world where I don't want to be humble and curious around them.
oh, you read my mind. You read my mind, my friend, because I'm thinking, Dr. Josh, how am I going to do this? Because, I mean, honestly, there's some people that no bueno, I don't want to do that.
But that's a good check on ourselves then, too, right?
No, it really
that
is.
Fundamentally is, well, okay, I don't have it all together. That hopefully sends a message of humility to ourselves.
Yes. Humility and curiosity. What a dynamic pair of words that we really need to give serious attention to. One last thing before we do say goodbye for now, because we're going to have you back on. We've got so many conversations going. But if people want to kind of keep track of you, see, you do some cool stuff on social, how do they do that?
Sure. Well, here on Instagram, I'm at Dr. Josh M. On LinkedIn, also Dr. Josh M. And on Twitter, it's Dr. Josh.
Awesome. We will put that in the notes, the blog that goes with this show. Again, we thank you very much for being with us, taking time out of your busy schedule. We'll talk to you soon and see you soon.
This is Utalk Radio.